Hey everybody, it's Nick Astor. I'm excited to be with Ethan Soloviev. He is the Executive VP of Research at HOWGOOD, also the author of a book called Regenerative Enterprise. Thanks for joining us, Ethan.
Pleasure to be here.
Cool. Now, we've been having a lot of great conversations about agriculture specifically, and you came up with or have been talking about this idea that there are four paradigms of agriculture. What does that mean?
So I see in the world four different paradigms of agriculture that are at play. I want to start out by saying none of them are necessarily better than one another, but they have a different effect on the environment, a different effect on the ecosystem, and a different overall potential for systems change. So the first paradigm is most of agriculture, and that's extractive. Extractive agriculture aims to extract value from natural resources for personal gains, to achieve a financial capital return, for safety and security for family. It's extracting resources for gain. That's extractive agriculture. The next level is, or paradigm, is what we refer to as conservative agriculture. So this is this idea of like, okay, we've been extracting a lot that may have degraded ecosystems, that may have had some not so great benefits for the long-term health of our soil or our land. Let's not do that. Let's conserve resources. Let's use less petrochemicals. Let's decrease the soil erosion. Let's try to make it less bad, less extractive. Interestingly, most approaches to sustainability, sustainable agriculture, are basically coming from this conservative, do less bad paradigm of agriculture. Even organic agriculture, for the most part, the organic certification is focused on here's the things you don't do. You don't use these chemicals. You don't do these sorts of practices. You reduce tillage. So it's still about conserving resources. Even though there are some practitioners of organic agriculture who would say, no, it's much more than this, and many organic farmers do more, but the paradigm, the thinking behind it is a lot of times still, how do we reduce harm, do less bad?
Mm-hmm.
The next paradigm of agriculture is what I call net positive or restorative agriculture. And here's this idea of like, okay, instead of just doing less bad, let's do good. Let's improve the soil. Let's add carbon. Let's increase biodiversity. Let's make the water healthier that's here. So here we're stepping beyond like reducing harm and making things less shitty. Can I say that? Or
Yeah.
Here we're moving beyond this paradigm of doing less bad and stepping into what can we do good? How can we be really positive with the impact of our agriculture on our farm? This is really great. There's some folks that are out there doing this, not as many as I'd like. A lot of the carbon farming that you see happening out there is in this direction. How do we put carbon into the soil? And actually, most farms, at least, are actually really more talking about restorative agriculture or do good agriculture. None of this so far has actually touched what I would consider fully regenerative. So when you get to that fourth paradigm, or the regenerative paradigm, you can't just do good on your farm. You can't just improve the system. You actually have to be working on the whole system and how do you evolve the capacity of that system to improve itself over time. So we're no longer just, on my farm here in upstate New York, I'm no longer just trying to add carbon to the soil or make it more diverse. I'm seeking to shift the whole paradigm and culture of agriculture in the Hudson River Valley so that all farmers and everyone involved in the food system can evolve the health, vitality, and well-being of the place.
This is really cool. Now, what's interesting is we talked a little bit at the beginning, well, none of these is necessarily good or bad per se, but I still sense the concept there's a bit of a hierarchy here in terms of.
It's really hard.
You know what I mean?
It's really hard to make it not so. I do know what you mean, but part of why I said that, and I actually do believe that, I have my own preference, and that's what comes through. Like, I'm trying to get my farm towards a regenerative farm. But part of it is I don't want to come in and show up and say, well, regenerative is better, restorative is better, you suck, you should really do it the way that I'm doing it. What I want to say is, here's these different systems that are out there, different people doing it different ways. What are you doing? Where do you think you're at in this map currently? Where do you want to be? And that ends up as a different conversation than me coming in and saying, well, you should be regenerative. You should, stop doing this and start doing that. It
Mhm.
puts it more on a conversational bridge building playing field as opposed to I'm right, you're wrong.
But it seems to me that the goal here is that, given climate issues, given population issues, given degradation of soil and the ecosystem, the intention here is to move us towards this direction of the fourth paradigm. Is that the general concept here?
That's what I want to do on my farm, and I want to invite other people to head in that direction. But a lot of the farmers that grow most of the food you're eating and that I'm eating don't believe in climate change, right? Might not believe in some of these issues, and I want to be able to engage them and have a conversation and allow them to choose their own path forward. And I think that's part of what I'm aiming for here. I fully admit my preference for
Uh-huh.
my farm would be to go in this direction, and there are systemic effects on the world that can happen through a larger scale adoption of regenerative agriculture. But I'm not going to come out and say it is better in a hierarchical way.
Very diplomatic. I appreciate that. Now there are folks out there that want to buy food. They want to know where their food is coming from. They want to know that their purchasing decision is having an effect in the in the direction that we're implying here. And so what do they have? We've got these different certifications for X, Y, and Z, and none of these certifications are perfect. But in your opinion, sort of what's the status of certification? Is it even helpful? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah, great question. There's two perspectives on it. Certifications basically become necessary when trust is lost. When you don't know your farmer, when you aren't growing your own food, when you are purchasing something that came from Vietnam or Ecuador or South Africa, and you don't know the people at every step of the way where it came, certification comes in as this third party to sort of ensure that things haven't gotten worse than what your values are. And that's one of the overall issues of certifications and why most of them end up coming from the conservative paradigm, the do less bad paradigm, is because it's hard to have a certification that looks at the potential for positive ecological and social restoration. Like, that's not something that's easily put into a set of checkboxes and standards. The whole structure of certifications are against what happens in the regenerative paradigm, where unique farmers in unique places are developing their own practices and principles for regenerating the ecological and social health of their own place. So, there's a bunch of certifications that have come out in the last couple of years that are claiming to be regenerative. And in my opinion, none of them have gotten there yet. One of them is entirely practice focused one. So it's just, did you do this practice? Yes or no. Did you not do this practice? There's no requirement that the carbon even increases in the soil. There's no requirement that biodiversity or health of the ecosystem improves. Another one that came out recently is a ecological verifications outcome. That's the Savory Land to Market program. And that is the only one I know of that's out there that's actually outcomes based, that checks what is happening on the ground. Are conditions improving? Is there a positive trend here? But that certification really only focuses on ecological outcomes. So it doesn't get the whole systems picture of social and human and indigenous rights and issues and climate justice. None of that's in there. And again, it's focused pretty functionally on improvement in the ecosystem. But in most of our global ecosystems, in the last couple hundred years, we've severely degraded the soil. Right? Things are in much worse shape than they are. So we're basically still on a restorative path, building carbon back up to what it used to be before agriculture messed it all up. So I am a proponent of the Savory verification system. I think it's the best standard that's out there. There's another outcomes-based verification that we've heard is on the way in the coming year. That will be very interesting. I think moving towards outcomes-based instead of practice-based certifications is good, but ultimately I think the whole certification system needs to needs to be composted and have something more effective emerge, because it's just hard with the structure of certifications to actually help head towards regeneration.
I like it. Well, we're running out of time here, but I love the way this conversation is going. give us a little bit of a teaser of where this conversation could go. And we're going to see you in May. We're going to be at the Transform conference in San Francisco. And where do we take this conversation? How do we get somewhere useful with it?
I think one of the key things for moving regenerative agriculture forward is looking at the business and the investing side of it. So I've been doing some research heading towards the Transform event, looking at all of the different regenerative agriculture investors that are out there, all the funds that are explicitly focusing on making investments into agriculture that heads in this direction. I'm not sure how many of them achieve, my sort of high bar of what I believe regeneration is, but many are going that way. And so definitely expect to hear more at Transform about the handful. There's only 30 maybe out there in the world that are explicitly investing in regenerative agriculture. But there'll be the results of our research and hopefully some gathering of those players together to think about what do we do? How do we need to invest? How can we invest regeneratively to push regenerative agriculture forward?
Awesome. Well, Ethan, thanks so much. We're excited to see you in person, and we'll keep the conversation rolling.
Thanks, Nick. Cheers.